Does connecting to your sharded Valkey cluster feel like navigating a house of mirrors? In a recent post, I talked about the basics of how to connect to a Redis Valkey Sharded Cluster. There are some complications you may have to deal with. Let's say you're setting up a Valkey Sharded Elasticache Cluster for a big project that a whole team of developers will be using, just like I did a week ago. How do you make it so they can access it locally? How about accessing it through a Bastion? The easiest way to connect locally is to have the CLI tool installed in a Docker image, then open up that image directly via an interactive terminal. Then, because you're on the same network using Docker Compose as the cluster, it should be able to talk to it because it's all running inside of Docker Compose. Obviously, you wouldn't want to package the CLI tool into your production image, so you could either create multiple ways to build the application layer image and then run it from in the application layer image, or you can create a image that's just a local Bastion image that you would spin up in the Compose and then connect everything else. That's probably the way to do it. What if you wanted to use a desktop tool to connect to the cluster running via Docker Compose? Just exposing the ports that cluster was running on would not be enough. When you hit with one of those redirects that we talked about in my other post, then it's going to redirect to an IP address that only exists inside that network, not on the host network. So your computer would be unable to reach it. What you do is change the announce settings. I'll zoom in, specifically on Valkey here. They're documented env vars. You'll notice a few like Valkey Cluster announce IP. That'll allow you to override the IP address that Valkey announces itself as. You could set it to be 127.0.0.1, and that would be the host's IP. You could override the announce port. All right, so if you've got each cluster running a different port, you could have it announce on different ports. Or if you're forwarding to the Bastion and you've got, instead of doing different hosts, you could do different ports for each of those. Now, everybody would have to have the same Bastion setup for that to work, but you get the idea. You could use Valkey Cluster announce host name. So, yes, there's a dog on my lap. And Valkey Cluster preferred endpoint type. And you could decide what the host names are. You could basically throw some DNS in there. You also can do all the stuff via the conf file. So a .conf file as well. What Valkey settings are you overriding? Also, isn't tealing hilarious? With that said, I'm Matt with Schematical. Have a great day.